All right, go ahead. So introduce your project.
Yeah, so um basically so I'm just my name is Jerman, by the way. It's, a little bit tricky for anyone outside of Scandinavia to pronounce. Yeah, so I'm from Norway, and we started Empower in 2018. Actually, we were working on an SDK at the time, like a wallet SDK, so you could drop in this SDK and make a mobile and get a mobile wallet essentially. That was one of the issues we saw at the time, that it was tricky to get wallets into your apps if you wanted to do decentralized applications. But this was 2018 and it was a little early still, and one of the issues we met was basically that people didn't understand blockchain at all at this point. It's still bad, but back then it was terrible. So we decided we needed a better use case to show people what can this be used for. So we met up with a couple of people at that time, and one of them was this guy called Simon Knudsen, who's a founder of um, this organization, NGO called Nordic Ocean Watch, and they do beach cleanups and work a lot with ocean and plastics. So he asked us, is there any way we can utilize any of this blockchain technology for for the plastic problem, which had just then started to become more and more widespread in the news and so on. So in in Norway, we have this system called the bottle deposit system, which is essentially um, this. It's like a reverse vending machine system. So basically, when you have an empty bottle, you can deliver it back at the stores, and you get a little bit of a reward back. It's an incentivization system that works extremely well. So in Norway, we have 97% of bottles are getting recycled, but uh, globally, the number is way below 10%. So we figured, could we use the cross-border and like decentralized aspects of blockchain to do something similar for all kinds of plastic? That's how Empower actually started. Was this idea that can we get back all these materials before it becomes a problem? So we did that for a year. We did pilots in 16 countries, and we learned that we needed to do a lot more around the problem, because what we learned was that it's the digital and physical infrastructure was severely lacking in many places around the world. And so we started building a platform, a Web 2 cloud platform, for doing tracking of plastic waste and different tools for different parts of the supply chain, essentially. The reason we went Web 2 at the time was because there wasn't really any good solution we could use. We couldn't really go with Ethereum, for instance. Even the talks of L2s, which were not really there then, would still not solve our problem properly. And it's only recently with Cosmos and the tech around that we realized that it's actually possible to do this. So that's kind of where we are now. We have this Web 2 platform that we've been running for a while, and now we see that we can actually start to move back to where we came from and start decentralizing some of these tools. So the way that we're currently working with the Cosmos ecosystem, or the Cosmos SDK, actually, is what I meant, is that we're starting to pull out some of these elements from our platform into modules on our own Cosmos SDK chain called Empower Chain. So, for instance, one of the first small modules that we're moving out there is a proof of existence module. So you can prove that data existed at a certain point in time, which is useful when you have long supply chains and you need to prove that data has not been altered with, for instance. But what's most exciting to me, and that's also going back to where we actually started from, it's this incentivization of cleanups of plastic waste, but also of returning post-consumer products back before it becomes waste. Because the moment it becomes waste, it's super expensive to deal with, and basically the best case scenario is most often is that it gets incinerated, which is not great for the environment, obviously, either. So, being able to create incentive schemes for countries, but for anyone essentially, to set up incentive schemes to take back products, get it tracked, so to make sure that it gets recycled, and with then the end goal being that we get these circular economies, these circular systems where these materials are never leave into nature or get incinerated, but can actually be reused to a large extent. It's obviously a very big and complex problem, but the way we see it is that the digital infrastructure to do this, we believe that the way to make that work is through decentralization and community and shared ownership of that digital infrastructure. It should be a public good. You don't want it to.
So it's really,
yeah. Go ahead.
So what's really great about this call is like we have you, and you've got a very specific use case and a problem and like a real world application. And Web3 has suffered a lot of criticism because people are like, well, where's the use case? And you've got a working, prior era use case of, the recycling bottles, and people are actually doing that. They are getting incentivized. They are getting paid. And then you're coming in, you're offering a newer and better way of doing this. So you've got a real use case. And then also on the call, we've got Dan Lynch. So you're going to have a bunch of problems and challenges in building that out and making that happen. And you selected the Cosmos SDK, and you're in the process of working out the modules and what those pieces are. And then we've got Dan Lynch, who's innovating on the front end. Like I imagine at some point, Empower is going to need some front end display of the kinds of data and interactions that you want your users to be able to have with your blockchain. And what Dan Lynch is doing is he's creating a number of innovations on that front. And then we've got Deval from Praetor, who's innovating on the infrastructure piece with the Akash network as a partner project of theirs to help people set up and provision servers for providing decentralized infrastructure in a more streamlined way. So I'd be curious, Dan Lynch, I want to call on you. What do you think when you hear a use case like this? Like how can the tools that you're building help provide users a better interface with the kind of solution that Yerman is building?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I would just say that my vision is just to help developers just focus on their idea, right? I think a lot of times we sit down to build something and then we end up getting bogged down with tasks we didn't even know we had to deal with. I think in the Cosmos, especially in the front end, that's the case. You just want to broadcast a simple transaction, but in order to have compatibility with Ledger and sign this transaction, you have to understand proto-buffers and amino encoding. And typically, like most front end developers, just want to focus on CSS or React or something more in their wheelhouse. So in essence, my goal is just to give that experience back to front end developers by making all the transaction and broadcasting and encoding just kind of in the background again, as it should be, and just kind of providing like really simple, easy to use classes for developers to interact with their blockchains.
So I could imagine a use case where these vending machines or recycling centers that are taking in these bottles might need to have some display through your tools like Telescope, and like having to build this full stack solution where Yerman and Power have to also be responsible for the client side of piece of this.
Yeah, I mean, telescopes, it's really just going to help their time to market, right? Right now, you have to invest quite a bit of time in, making making sure that things work on the front end. And, telescope's like, hey, just point telescope to your back end. Telescope essentially reads your back end code and then generates all your front end bindings so that you can just build the user interface. If you were going to use if you weren't using Telescope, you'd have to have a front end developer now that has to write all these bindings. So essentially, we're just improving developer productivity. Less code because our code writes that code for you. Essentially, yeah, it's like a transpiler or like a compiler. So it's kind of like we're trying to just provide higher level interfaces for developers. Using the blockchain as the source.
So you're really just lowering the barrier to entry on the developer side, and speeding up the time to market, which is exactly what we need right now. So we definitely appreciate you doing that work.
Yeah, I think.
So Yerma, what have the blockers been for you? Like, aside from having to learn Cosmos SDK, but like in terms of getting it to market, like what's preventing you from being productive, I suppose? Like, what are the hurdles?
Well, I think the main hurdle one of the first hurdles that you get to is all the things you need to learn about how to get to even that testnet running, right? Because you need to get a validator set. You need to and at the same time, you need to think about the technical part, the community building part. There's just like a million different things that you need to think about at once, which is typical startup life. You have to learn a bunch of stuff you've never done before and you're not comfortable with necessarily. But I think a lot of these things are things that can be abstracted away. And should be abstracted away eventually, and that's also one of the reasons I think Saga is brilliant and clearly needed. The more we can abstract away all these infrastructure things that not everyone needs to be an expert at, the better. So and the same goes for the front end, right? Like you said, like getting all the bindings and everything up and running is going to be pain, and I'm super excited about Telescope as well, and we're definitely going to use that.
I'm kind of hearing like the start of a new stack, and I like maybe it's too early, but like I'm just imagining like Telescope, tools like this on the front end, some kind of back end infrastructure service to help with the validators and shared security on the back end, maybe some middleware pieces or programming languages. In your mind, like, what is your stack today? Like what's the Empower stack?
So our you mean our like Web 2 stack or the one
your intended Web 3 stack? Like, what are the key pieces that you see coming together to make it happen?
Well, I mean, it's definitely the validator set, right? And getting all the updates running, and obviously for each and every one of those validators, they have their own set of infrastructure pieces that needs to be maintained and set up. So it's obviously that, and then the blockchain itself with everything that comes through that. I don't know. I'm trying to what you said about the stack there and like this. I'm thinking back to some of the like early web stacks, like with the Python and Django and Ruby on Rails and these things, where you got a lot of magic stuff for free. And I've even seen some of them start to pop up in the Go community as well. It's still our focus around web and like microservices and stuff like that, but where you get to abstract away like a ton of these boilerplate and non-value adding aspects, such as servers and like all these bindings between things that are really not adding value that you just wish were done. So
that's actually a good because we have Praetor here, and that's actually exactly what they do. But finish your thought before I talk to them.
I think that was pretty much it, and I want to hear about Praetor.
So Deval, can you talk about Praetor and how you fit into this picture, and like which part of those problems does Praetor help to solve, and how you can help developers be successful given the complexity of making all these things work?
Yeah, sure. So, let's introduce myself. My name is Deval. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Praetor. In previous year, I headed a software development company called Actin Technologies, and in addition to that, I worked on as a senior architect in both public and private sector companies. So that's my background. But then after we assembled a team of blockchain and Web3 developers. So what Praetor does, Praetor makes blockchain human-friendly by removing entry barriers and improving the user experience on the network. And it does the cost saving in between as well. So to start with, what we have done, and everybody has same issues that, okay, the blockchain today is so highly technical and all CLI and all these things, right? So it's not useful for end users. Means that so let's say an average guy or developer, let's say, want to use it, right? It's complex for them, right? It's they have to go through lots of documentations. So we started with the Praetor provider. That's our first product we came up with in partner with Akash Network. And I'm not sure how many of you guys know Akash Network itself. So Akash Network is a peer-to-peer marketplace where anybody who has excess capacity of excess capacity of compute power, not the network, excess capacity of compute power means lying around, the servers lying around, or the high level gaming PCs are lying around and they are not utilizing it. They can lease it out to the Akash network, and they can earn AKT in reward of whenever the deployment happens on their and on their provider machines, that they can earn the AKT in terms of passive income, or they can run the business out of it as well, right? So that's Akash network. But in order for you to become a cloud provider, right? So Akash network itself is a layer 1 blockchain in Cosmos ecosystem. Cosmos SDK, using Cosmos SDK. So in order for you to become a cloud provider, you have to go through a series of procedures that are actually in order for you to give your compute power, you need to make Kubernetes by yourself. You need to do server administrator stuff and things like that. So what we have done and for them is we simplify the process of becoming cloud provider. So we created the UI and the backend, right? So it's kind of full blown application, web app we created, where they just need to provide a couple of things like their server credentials and their domain names and stuff, right? Where they want to point their provider service and the ingress domain. That's all it takes, right? And out of just 1 or 2 screens, and they just become provider within 20 minutes. So it used to take for them to make any average provider to become cloud provider on Akash. It used to be about 2 days process actually, right? Like, because they have to go back and forth with the support staff and find out, okay, what do I need to fill out this information, that, and like all these things. We simplified that process, and now we have seen that people become provider within just 20 minutes, right? So that's a significant improvement what we have done. And going forward, right, what is our next goal is actually. So far we have worked on enriching the application to help the supply side of the Akash network, right, where we make the people cloud provider. Our next major step will be towards the consumer side of the network, where we believe that if we can make it simple for end user, regardless of whether they are supplier or the consumer of the network, it will significantly boost the adoption of the network. So what we would like to see, and we would love to see all kind of projects using Akash for that go to computational need. So you can actually, so the thing is that you can deploy any application on Akash network, right? Like let's say if your WordPress blog is running, you want to deploy, you can deploy. If you want to deploy your Python application, Java application, like name it, right? You can deploy anything, right? Which you can Dockerize. But at the end of the day, the goal is that you should be able to Dockerize your application, right? So because behind the scene, it uses the Kubernetes, and your application gets to the Kubernetes deployment. And I'm sure these are technical people and they know Kubernetes, what is, right? It's like you can scale the application as well in the Kubernetes, right? But like in order to make your application compatible, right? So like the current state of Akash network has some limitations. Here, I just want to give you one example is that deploying to Akash network requires the developers to know how to make their application compatible with the Kubernetes, right? If we can take that heavy lift on us, right, we can extend the network's reach to uncharted market share. That's what we believe, basically. So what does that mean is that if we can make a tool where they just provide their GitHub account or GitHub, like they connect their GitHub, right, and or the project, right, and if we can Dockerize it by ourselves, then they can use this Akash network easily. That's frictionless. So those are the things we are working on behind the scene to make it more useful in terms of how we can remove the friction for the Akash network. Just to start with Akash network, right, but not limited to that, right? But yeah.
Very cool. So one day, maybe through Praetor, maybe that you have a decentralized network of vending machines, and people could just kind of like list their machine and opt in to receive workloads, or some sort of workflow like that. Maybe
So
eventually.
basically they can like when the Akash network brings the GPU support, they are promising. Like in couple of quarters, I would say. Right. Then what we can do is that we can take the workload of the AI or the machine learning, right, or the models, right. We can run on they can run on Akash, right. But they need some sort of middleware in terms of to make things easy for them, right, in order to use the Akash. So we can be that middleware, right, where they can use our service or our application in order to do that, right. So that. Like basically we want to be that middleman between the friction of the between the Akash and the deployer or the provider, right? So that's kind of thing.
So you are going to help bring GPUs to Akash, is that what I'm hearing, in a usable manner?
In a usable manner, yes. So Akash will itself bring the GPU and CPU GPU support,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But we want to make it easy for deployer or the machine learning guys or the AI guys to use that GPU, CPU, and even we are going to ease the GPU and CPU support for, like whoever wants to provide that GPU, CPU support, we are going to make their life easy for them to provide in Akash as well, right? So both side, the supplier and the demand side as well for the GPU.
Yeah,
CPU.
That's super exciting. That's the part of Akash that I'm most excited for, is just the machine learning side and just really opening that up.
Because think about it, right? In machine learning, you don't have to run all your models all the time, right? Sometimes you run it for, let's say, a couple of hours, and then after you destroy your models, right? Or sometimes you keep it running as well, right? So I would say to start with, we can tap into those kind of areas where the workload is not too critical to, let's say, your machine goes down, or you can restart your loads and stuff like that. So yeah, Akash is very useful for those kind of things to start with.
I think it's AI. Like, I've been waiting for AI to creep in and IoT to creep in, because like you look at Empower's use case and you're like, like if I hold up a bottle and take a picture of it and like use TinyML or something to scan it, like you can see all these pieces fitting together of like the vending machine, like running like front end stack from Dan Lynch, and then like storing the data on the power chain, and then using Praetor as the basis for like setting up, managing, provisioning, updating the machine. So like it's just it feels like it's very early, but ultimately 5 years from now,
Yeah.
like
So
you'll have mature versions of all this. Yeah, go ahead.
Uh, another thing we notice is that in Akash is like we see lots of people are running their Sentry nodes, because like in the Cosmos ecosystem itself, right? You need to run a couple of Sentry nodes in order to protect your validator node, actually, right? So we've seen people running their Sentry nodes right now in Akash, and that's another use case of Akash. And Akash Lytics actually that is another tool that provides easy way to access the that to deploy that kind of nodes at this point of time as well, right? So anybody who is making that new chain, right, or spinning up new chain, they can completely utilize the Akash network at this point of time, and they can run their nodes or validators at this point from that part.
And you were mentioning that something about packaging everything into like Docker images because the backend is actually in Kubernetes. Like, I'm curious, is there like a place where we could find templates for, let's say, validating a certain chain? Because I feel like that would catalyze a lot of a use if there was like a place where you could go and it's like a template for validating on Cosmos, or a template for validating on Akash, and kind of having it so that validators can quickly spin up these Akash deployments.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So right now, the project called Osmos Hub, Cosmos Hub or something. Give me just 1 second, okay? There is like, if you go to Akash Lytics tools, like I'm not sure if you're familiarized with that, right? But if you go to Akash Lytics tools, and you can actually find that, right? But there is a I just forgot.
It's called
that.
Cosmos Omnibus, right?
Oh yes, Cosmos Omnibus. Thank you for that. Yes, so like you can find the Cosmos Omnibus.
Oh, cool, great, yeah, I see that. Awesome. Yeah, I think Akash has a lot of use cases. Another cool use case I think in the future, which I think is also in line with the vision of Akash, because a lot of even before Overclock created Akash, a lot of the focus was on leveraging unutilized Slack capacity. And I feel like if people would be okay with like certain things kind of running like background processes, like sort of like some lag could be allowed with like sort of like a distributed like cloud function environment.
Yes.
I feel like the fact that Akash already has this algorithm for leveraging unutilized Slack capacity, and then on top of that, maybe having these like ephemeral functions that you're kind of spinning up with already very cheap prices. It seems that you could have like really advanced applications running like for super low cost at like unprecedented levels.
Yes, that's the point of that's where we want to work, where super high capacity compute they need, right? Then we can distribute that load, right? Using our application, right? Like and how we can simplify that. That's our main intention. Intention is actually going to be in coming months and quarter, actually.
I think this concept of like validator experience is interesting. Nobody's using that terminology, but it just, never having set up and run a validator node myself, I gather it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, and like set it up, run it, make it like operate it, and like have it be like profitable, and like with all these different networks also. So on the Saga side, like the way our validators are going to be running is a little different than I think validators are used to operating. So like having tools like Praetor that like can kind of step in and be like, well,
Yeah, absolutely. So
yeah.
we can simplify the process for your validator in terms of becoming a validator, right, on for your chain, right, or Saga, right, I would say. Then definitely, by all means, we can simplify that process as well for you, right, or for your network.
I think that's extremely exciting, and part of the reason for that is like, so from our side on Empower, our vision is that this whole waste management and like all that should be not just a decentralized but and a community owned one, but it should be super easy for anyone essentially to be part of that in a meaningful way. And I like our first main goal of that is that it should be possible for anyone to set up like a collection point where they can take in materials and be part of that network. But that also would require them to somehow have access to some kind of servers and probably some digital infrastructure that we were to host initially. But what I want is that Empower is not really necessary there, right? That it's completely decentralized and anyone can just spin up their own little part of that, which also would make sense in terms of optimizing for local conditions. Because one of the issues we have is that since we're essentially operating globally, we have had a lot of trouble with the performance and when you go to a lot of different places, having being able to optimize for locations all across the world is a tricky problem in and of itself.
So this is part of why, like, just stepping back, like when I joined Saga, a couple months ago, we announced one of the first things we did was announce the Saga Innovator Program. The goal of the program is exactly like this kind of conversation. It's like, if you find the key innovative builders from the ecosystem and you put them together, and like everybody's got different problems and they all see different aspects of, I guess the developer productivity value chain. But when you have the group conversations, people like the three folks talking on this call have the ability to collaborate and solve these problems jointly and come up with new like visions. So that's the end goal of the Saga Innovator Program. And we're going to be scaling it over the next few months leading into our AlphaNet launch announcement. And we're looking for folks that have this kind of cross-section of interesting use case, technology, builders, creative visionary. And we're going to be finding folks like this and providing them early access to our CLI tools, document, sample code to get feedback. And then that's going to lead into the next phase, which will be our DevNet announcement later on, date not sent. So that's kind of the goal of us standing up these communities and trying to facilitate these conversations, because our ultimate objective is to make developers more productive. And one of the best ways to do that is to build these networks. So having said that, I'd like a question for the room. What do you think the biggest opportunities to improve Cosmos developer productivity are? Like if you could point to one thing and be like, oh, if Cosmos only did this, or if we only built this, like what would that be? And maybe I should ask each of you one at a time. So Yermund, what would you say that is? If you could name one thing.
I think maybe my initial I would love to think more about it, but my initial gut reaction is validator automation in some way, or
Okay.
like a full-fledged dashboard for you to get all the validators in easily without having to do a bunch of social engineering to get there, to be able to initiate upgrades and communication. And yeah, there's so much so much action to just get
Yep.
the network
That's
running.
exactly what we're working on.
Yeah, right. I was just going to say
Yeah, so-
Saga, but
Yeah.
that's a troll.
Sometimes I have
We're not
seen.
paying anybody here, except for Joe. Yeah.
Yeah. The shared
I have
security
seen.
environment, and it kind of plays off the whole validator idea.
Yeah.
It's just improving the shared security and ability for everyone to not have to spin up their own validator set, because that is such an enormous challenge in building all those economics to make it all work and make everyone play along and have your system secure under all circumstances. There's a lot there where Ethereum and Solana, they all just share the security of the chain, and it's beautiful. They don't have to worry about any of it. So that's where we could have some improvement. But usually when you sacrifice you share your security and you give up the ownership of the validator set, you also lose a little bit of sovereignty. So I like that Cosmos has like a pick your own option, and really lets you can start as just on a smart contracting chain and then move to something like Saga and then get your own block space. And then eventually when you're a big successful chain, you can build your own app chain. So anyway,
So
that's
Dan,
kind of a long-winded answer.
Thank you. Dan, what would you say needs to be improved the most, or biggest opportunity?
Yeah. In general, I think just the developer experience, coming from, traditional environments, I guess you call it Web 2, I just want to throw JSON at a server and, just get to work and have an idea and fluidly be able to express it. I don't think we're quite there yet. And so, more tooling to get to the place where we can kind of abstract away a lot of these like repetitive, mundane sort of tasks that are more like software construction than software engineering, so that we can get people back into engineering and implementing, algorithms and logic and not like sort of these sort of necessary tasks for like, binding things. Such as the work that I'm doing with like, amino encoding. And yeah, just so I think more tooling will help with that. And, maybe more example apps. I think there's a lot we can do around documentation. I think like I found that I kind of had to reverse engineer my way into building tooling. There just wasn't a lot out there. So I think, consolidating and documenting, as well as providing like higher levels of abstraction while still giving people a chance to kind of dive under the hood. I think tools like, Starport, Ignite CLI were like a good first step. From what I've heard, it wasn't something that you could actually use. I'm not a Go developer, so don't take my word for it. But I heard that like you could kind of set something up, but then it was just more for like a learning experience. So I feel like if there was something like that where you could, similar to like what Ruby on Rails did for development in 2006 or whatever it was, where just like all of a sudden overnight you've got all these new applications spawning, and that's because you could use this CLI tool to quickly start scaffolding applications and developing them. So I think like, tooling in that spirit, in that direction, sort of like a Ruby on Rails for Cosmos. I feel like we definitely need something like this.
Deval, biggest opportunity. You probably have a lot of ideas.
No, I think I want to echo the Dan as well on that one, because I believe, and we have seen this, right, that biggest challenge right now of what with the developers is that they don't have time or energy actually as well to look into the documentations and go through them, and go through the CLI codes like line by line. Not all the developers are good with the CLI. I would say they know the CLI, but they are not good with the CLIs as well, right? So they need more kind of tooling in terms of front end design or the back end, which supposed to tell or which supposed to validate their idea or validate what they want to do, right, with the chain, right? So yeah, that's something what we are working on, and I would say it will open up the more you know. Engagement towards the developers. That's yeah.
So for anybody, if you were talking to developers considering building in Cosmos, spinning up their chain, are there any communities or groups you guys recommend joining that are particularly helpful, or where you see a lot of newcomers go to get hands-on support, or that have been helpful for you, just to kind of like spread the word?
I think for me, one of the places I started and where I got to go fairly deep was actually with the Ignite CLI and that community there. Yeah, so that's sort of where I started, and there's quite a lot of newcomers coming in there as well. But also just the regular Cosmos network Discord. There's a lot of newcomers coming in there on the new dev support channel in particular. So that's like the initial ones, I guess.
Yeah,
Anybody?
I think same thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Same thing for us as well. Anybody reach out to us, or I mean, if anybody needs help in order to, because we started with the Akash, so that's why I'm saying again and again Akash. But anybody reach out to us on our Twitter or Discord or for any kind of help, then we are happy to help as well. Like we have our own Discord for Praetor. We have the Twitter channel for ourselves as well, right? So I mean. Twitter. So just ask for help, right? And we are happy to help.
Are there any areas that any of you need help with that you think the community might be able to support you with? Don't have to answer. Okay.
Sorry about that. We have enough support at this point of time. Whatever we need from Akash Network and the team. If we need any other help, then definitely we'll shout out and ask for help for the community at point of time.
I think for us, I just want to talk to people and talk about the Empower Chain, the plastic waste problem, and of course building in Cosmos, which I'm also extremely excited about. So yeah, I just want to talk. So if you want to talk, find me on Twitter or here or Empower Chain Discord or wherever, and let's chat.
Any questions from the audience, I suppose, or anybody else? Any questions from the audience? Anything, Joe? You have anything to add?
No, not really. I think it was a really productive dev call today. Had a lot of fun having you guys on here. Appreciate you coming. If no other no comments or questions from the audience, we can probably close this one out.
Sounds good. Thank you. And I tweeted and I referenced the Saga handle about all the projects, and I'll put the tweet in the Discord chat if you want to follow these guys also.
Perfect. Thanks, Rex. Hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Me too.
All right.
Thank you,
Guys.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Everybody.
Bye.